Hello everyone. In this tutorial, I'm going to go over the rest of the features of the timeline, which is going to be how to copy and paste these frames over, how to change the order, move them around, and things like that. Okay, so let's get started. Before I start, I'm just going to do a little bit of house cleaning by cleaning the area that is outside of this document size. So I'm in the wrong layer. Oh, what just happened? What did I do? Okay, so I need to be in the background layer, unlock it, and then I'm just going to make a selection, hit backspace, make a selection, backspace, selection, backspace. Okay, that's much nicer. Okay, locking the background again. All right, so now I want to show you a couple of things in the in here. So let's first start by adding one more keyframe in between these two frames. So there are so many cases in animation that whenever you want to do pose-to-pose animation, you draw the first two keyframes and then you want to go back and draw the frames that are in the middle. So let's say that's the case. I want to add one keyframe between frame 1 and 2. Let's just call it 1.5. So there are multiple ways that you can do that. One would be to go to the frame that you want to create the keyframe and hit our favorite F7, right? Again, and then do F5 to add some frame exposure to it, and then you're going to draw your 1.5. For the most part, you always want to have your your light box, or as Animate calls them, onion skins, turned on because you want to be able to see the frame before and after, and that's the key that you need to push to do that. And then you go to your brush tool and I'm like, okay, 1.5. Like turning on the onion skin in this case is, but it's not necessary, but I just wanted to show you this feature, right? And if you ever wanted to change the exposure or frames for each of those, you can still do that again with our favorite F5, right? You can also turn any of those already existing frames into keyframes. Just keep that in mind that if your time slider is over a frame and not a keyframe, whatever that you draw, it's going to be applied to the head of that cell, which is a keyframe, and then you're going to just see it through the rest of the frames. Just keep that in mind. So in this case, if I wanna create, let's say 1 point, I don't know, 25 before 1.5, what I can do is that I can use any of these frames that I already have, maybe turn this frame into a keyframe instead of clearing and start from the point 0. I can turn this frame here into a keyframe. And I can do that by right-clicking and convert this frame to a keyframe, right? So what it does, you can see that it's still our frame 1, right? But now it has turned into a keyframe. So now I can just use this to maybe add 2.5 or do whatever I want with that, right? And once I did that, I can add some frame exposure to that. So it goes 1, 125, 1.25, 1.5 to blah, blah. You get the idea, right? Okay, if I ever wanted to reduce frames, what I can do is that I can hold down Shift and then press F5, and then now I'm reducing the frames. You can see that, right? Shift F5. If you're over one keyframe and then you do Shift F5, then it just gets rid of that keyframe, right? So you just need to keep an eye on if you're on a frame, you're reducing the frames. If you're on a keyframe, you're basically, it's as if you're deleting that keyframe. So let's just go back to F5. Okay. if you ever was like, okay, you know what? I want the frame one to be here and I want to hold it up until frame five, but I just don't want this frame 1.25. But I want to keep the timing the same. I don't want the overall time of this layer to change. You can click on this frame that you don't want and then turn it into a frame again by clearing the keyframe. So you see how this is different than doing, let's just undo that. So if I go Shift F5, I'm actually reducing the time. You can see that, right? But if I go Shift F6, it just clears that keyframe, but the overall time of my layer, it's not going to change. So there are many instances that you want to use either of those two methods based on what you have on the screen and what you want to animate. So it's a good practice to learn to work with these shortcuts. If you're ever in doubt, just give it a try with numbers, with simple circles, just to get a hang of what they are and what they do. And the shortcuts are also listed here. Okay. Um, So now that we have learned how to add a keyframe in between the existing keyframes, let's just go over and see how we can actually copy frames. Let's say that I want to have frame two. Um, yeah, let's say I want to have frame two over after frame seven. What you need to know in Animate CC is that if you hold down, let's just not have anything selected. If you hold down Shift, make a selection. To move things around, you can just click and drag them. And now I just moved that frame over, right? It's going to clear it from here, and then it's going to place it wherever you want it to be, right? Undo that. But if you want to copy it over, you can hold down Alt, right? And then do the same. And Alt is going to copy things over. You can select a range of frames. If you don't have anything selected, hold down Shift, make a selection, and then move it over. It's just going to clear it from here. Or you can hold down Alt and copy it over. Okay, so Alt, if you hold down Alt, it's always for copying, no matter if you select just one frame, right? In this case, let's just put this 1.5, hold down Alt, and also put it after 2, right? So no matter if you want to drag just one frame or select a range of frame, for moving them, you can just click and drag them to the place. For copying them, you hold down Alt and do the same. Of course, you can always, Control C. Of course, you can always use the right click and then go copy frames and cut frames. And you see that there are also shortcuts for that. But I think instead of copying or cutting and pasting, doing it with Alt is much easier, but it's definitely your choice. If it's something that you don't like, you can always go copy frames, right? And then come down here and then paste frames, right? Or cut and paste. It's totally your pick, but I rather do it with the Alt. All right. So let me show you a couple of other things that are helpful. So I want to get rid of those frames, Shift F5. And maybe I don't need those. Those were just for demonstration purposes to show how you can add frames. Okay, let's just put everything back to holding them for 2 frames. And just so you know, if you hold things for 2 frames, it's called animating on twos. I noticed that in some tutorial animations, whenever they animate on twos, meaning they hold each frame for 2 frames, they say that now we are working on a 12 frame per second animation. That is not correct. Frame rate is should stay the same during your project. Frame rate is not up to you. So when you're animating on twos, it doesn't mean that the frame rate has changed. It's just something that I wanted to mention to you. Okay, so let's say you want to create a loop. What is a loop? So in animation, when you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then you go back to 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, that's called a loop, right? So you can easily create that by first duplicating all of these frames over. So if I want to create a loop, it means that after 7 should go 6, and then 5, and then 4, and then 3, and then 2, and 1 is already there, so we don't need that. So I'm just going to select 6. Oops, nope, go away. 6 through 2, right? And to copy them over, hold down Alt, drag them here. Now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, but it's in the order that is here. So what I need to do is that I need to reverse the order of the frame that I just copied over. So I'm just gonna undo so that my selection is back. So now everything is selected, or you can just hold down shift and select them all. And then you go right click, and then you reverse the frames, right? Easy peasy. Now it goes, I'm just gonna play that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Too fast, but you get the idea. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and then back to 1, right? And this is a really important feature. We're going to use that when we want to create walk cycles. Um, what else? Okay, so there are many times that you show an animation and I'm like, you know what? Let's just fix the composition on that. Which means selecting all the frames and move all of them at once over. So let's just cover that in the next video. So you can stop watching now, and I'm going to pause the video and go practice with copying and pasting frames over and change the order and have fun with that. See you in the next tutorial.